Good day everyone, I am your teacher for today, Cris Joby and Mateo from BE Ed 2A. Today I will be discussing sewing tools and equipments. After the discussion, the learners are expected to be familiarized with the different tools and equipments used in sewing, determine the use of each equipment and tools, have knowledge on how to use the different tools and equipment in sewing. And lastly, to be able to use the tools and equipments in sewing correctly. Before we start with our discussion, are you familiar with these things? Where do you often see these things? Do you know how to use these things? If you do, then great. But if you don't, let's start our discussion and get to know the uses of these things. Sewing tools and their uses. Let's start with the measuring tools. Our first measuring tool is the tape measure. It is a flexible measuring device used in taking body measurements. The front has the measurement of 150 centimeters and 60 inches on the other side. This is very important for the tailor for him or her to know the size of the fabric that he or she will be sewing. Next, we have the sewing gauge. It is a small ruler with a sliding guide and is about 6 inches long. This gauge is used for measurements at hemlines, buttonholes, and areas where other small measurements require checking, such as pleats and tucks. If you guys are not familiar of pleat, it is a double or multiple fold in a garment or other item made of cloth, held by stitching the top or side, while the tuck is a flattened stitch fold in a garment or material, typically one of several parallel folds put in a garment for shortening, tightening, or decorating. Then the hemline. It is the line formed by the lower edge of a garment such as a skirt, dress, or coat, measured from the floor. Now, our next tool is the yardstick. It is used for marking hemlines and checking grain lines when laying out the pattern. It is made up of wood or metal. Then we have the L-square or Taylor square. It is used to transfer measurements to the draft pattern. Divides the garment into the desired measurement. It has perfect squares and it is useful in making straight lines and numbers. It also can function as a tape measure. Then the last tool for our measuring tool is the French curve. This is used to shape the depth of the neck hole and armhole of the pattern. Now that we are done with the measuring tools, let's now move on with the cutting tools. Our first cutting tool is the bent-handled dressmaker's shears. These are made of quality steel and hold a sharp cutting edge. The blades move easily and cut smoothly along the entire length, and the points should come together. Shears have the length of 7 to 12 inches and are satisfactory for most apparel fabrics. This is also the tool that the tailor is always holding. This is very essential for them. These are the characteristics of shears. All steels. Chrome-plated shears are for heavy-duty cutting. It has stainless steel blades and plastic handles are fine for lightweight fabrics. And lastly, we have a serrated edge shears. Give maximum cutting control and use for synthetic fibers and slippery knits. That are the characteristics of shears. We can now move on with our next cutting tool, which is the pinking shears. This is popular in zigzagging or scalloped edge or for seam finishes. This is used to finish seams and draw edges and to create decorative edges on many types of fabric. It cuts a ravel-resistant edge. And of course, this is not satisfactory for straight cutting because it has zigzagging or zigzag edges. Then we have cutting scissors. Trimming scissor. It is 3 to 4 inches long. It is used for trimmings, clipping threads, and snipping slashes. Next, we have the embroidery scissor. It has 45 inches finely tapered blades. Both points are sharp for use in working with the fine details in delicate fabrics and in embroidery work. For the last cutting scissor, we have the buttonhole scissor. This is intended for making buttonholes. And still for cutting tools, thread clippers. A handy little spring-loaded cutting tool that allows for the snipping of threads, specifically used to snip threads, and they are not designed to cut fabrics. Then we have seam ripper. Seam rippers are specifically designed for ripping out stitches from seams, either as a result of an error or during alterations. They should be used carefully to prevent damage to the fabric because the edges of the seam ripper are sharp. And lastly, for our cutting tools, we have the rotary cutter and mat. It is an adaptation of the giant rotary cutter used by the garment industry. It works like a pizza cutter and can be used by left or right-handed sewers. The rotary cutter is available in different sizes with different blades. When using a rotary cutter, work on a cutting mat to protect the blade and the cutting surface. We should use the rotary cutter together with the cutting mat always. And that it is for our cutting tools. Let us now move on to the marking tools. Marking tools are required for transferring pattern markings to garment fabric pieces and for making alterations on garment. Our first marking tool is the chalk pencils or dressmaker pencil. This is available in white or pastel shades. This chalk pencil is used to make fine lines on fabric and it has an erasing brush at one end. Then we have liquid marking pen. Liquid marking pens come in two types. There is one that washes out and one that fades after 48 hours. Those that wash out should not be used on fabric that show watermarks. The marks should be removed before pressing the fabric so that it won't have stain. Then we have the most common marking tools that a tailors use, which is the tailor's chalk. This is essential as a marker for use on materials. Tailor's chalk is available in range of colors and is removed by brushing. Then we have wax chalk. This is available in black or white and is used for woolen fabrics. Wax can be removed by pressing. The last tool in our marking tools is the tracing wheel. There are two types of tracing wheels, those with a serrated edge and those with a smooth edge. The serrated edge wheel produces dots on the fabric and it's suitable for most types of fabrics, while the smooth edge wheel is best for delicate fabrics and unlike the serrated edge will not pierce more delicate fabrics. The smooth edge wheel creates a solid line. If we are going to use a tracing wheel, we should have the dressmaker's carbon paper or dressmaker's tracing paper, especially wax carbon paper that transfers the tracing wheel's marking to the fabric. A color of tracing paper should be chosen that is close to the color of the fabric. Different brands of tracing paper have different instructions. Therefore, the instructions for the particular brand that is purchased should be followed. And that are the marking tools. We are now ready to move on with the pinning and sewing tools. Are you still awake? Great! Hang in there and listen carefully. Let's go. Okay, we have the pin cushion. Holds the straight pins and needles while working to prevent accident. Then we have the hand needles, used in making temporary stitches and buttonholes. Sizes of 7 to 10 are for general hand sewing. So, as you can see in the pictures, there are different types of needles and it has different uses. And then we have the sewing needle threader. It is aids in putting the thread to the needle. It consists of two parts, the handle and the wire. So to use the threader, the end of the wire that is away from the holder is folded. Place the folded wire of the needle threader through the eye of the sewing needle. And of course, we have the thimble to protect our fingers. It is a small hard pitted cup worn for protection on the finger that pushes the needle in sewing. And And of course, we have the tools. We must have the materials to complete our sewing. Our first material is the fabric, of course. The fabric is the cloth used in making garments. The plain cotton fabrics, flour sack, or katcha is the most appropriate material for beginners because these are very easy to handle. Then, of course, we have the thread used in assembling or constructing the parts of the garment. Threads are vary in sizes. Heavy fabrics need stronger threads, of course, and threads should have the same color with that of the fabric used so that the thread is not so visible on the fabric. And that's all for our tools in sewing. I hope you guys learned a lot. And of course, for me to know if you really learned something, I have prepared here an assessment. So for this assessment, we are going to simply match the pictures to their names and their uses. Of course, I will be giving you some time to answer that, and later on, we were going to check if your answers are correct. So now, let's start. Good luck, everyone. Next slide. And the last slide. Now that we are done, we are now going to check our answers. So the answer on the first picture is that tape measure, and the second picture is the pinking shears, and the third picture is the rotary cutter and mat. For the next slide, we had the first picture as the hand needle, second one is the thimble, and the third one is the tailor's chalk. For the last slide, the first picture is the tracing wheel, the second picture is the thread clippers, and the last is the seam ripper. So I hope everyone get the correct answers. So as our discussion ends, we all know that our clothes wouldn't be made without these sewing tools and equipments. As we learned the essence of these tools, we must use them properly and carefully so that we can produce an excellent product. I hope you guys to do some garments soon that you handmade it. Of course, using these tools that we have discussed. So that's it for our discussion for today. Thank you for listening and for staying with me. I hope you learned a lot. Again, I am teacher Cris Joby A. Mateo from BE Ed 2A. And I hope to see you again for our next lesson. Thank you. Bye-bye.